Now with the deadlift, we're going to, again, I don't want you just to throw exercises at you. I want to show you with a particular movement how you can go through that system, how you can take that particular movement pattern and then just make it varied, make it as hard or as easy as you need it to be. So we'll take the deadlift, and this is important to be able to build up to the swing. Most people aren't ready to perform a swing, especially if they've never seen a kettlebell before, because they don't understand the mechanics. And so if they don't understand the mechanics of that and how to properly hinge, how to hinge explosively without the load also having to extend out, now we're just putting them in a very dangerous position. So we want to make sure we've mastered these positions, even if it's just for a moment, and then we can progress that person along. So that's what I want you to think of as we go through all these progressions. These are the progressions that you can take somebody from picking up a bell to swinging a bell to cleaning a bell to bringing it overhead and everything in between. Now, I also don't want you to think of these progressions as finite, that once you get to this position, you don't need to use that beginner position again. Even in your own training or in your client's training, this just provides you more variables for a specific movement pattern. So in this case, the deadlift. We might hold a deadlift iso hold, which we're about to do. Just because I can deadlift doesn't mean I don't have a place for the iso hold again. So I want you to think of this as a cyclical thing where it's all in this kind of cycle that we can always pick from at any point. Rather than point A to point B to point Z, it's all in this circle that we can always kind of pick from when we need to. Okay. So now that we get into, we're going to talk about the deadlift. So we're going to start off, again, always looking at things from a risk-reward standpoint. What can I do to provide the benefit that I'm trying to get from said movement that's going to give them the benefit of that movement without risking them or potentially risking them? So in this case, that's why we start off with the isometric. We start off with that static hold, that position. So we started it without any weight, without any load. Now we're going to do it with the load. So we're going to position that bell right in between the feet. At this point now, I sure as hell hope you know how to hinge and how to deadlift. We're going to drive the hips back. Now in this case, because we had to pick up the bell, we're obviously going to have to use a little bit of knee flexion depending on your levers. You might have longer arms, you might have longer femurs, whatever that may be, as long as when we get that bell, we're always in that straight back position. So for me, to get into a strong hinge where my shins are vertical, my knees are extended back, I'm still a good foot away from the bell. So now at this point, once you find that position, you see where your hands are in line with the kettlebell. Now we're going to drop down and bend at the knees. So from here, I'm going to lift up the bell, just slightly hovering over the ground. And we're going to just hold this position. So ready, set, and as I pick it up, I'm going to pull my shoulders down. I'm engaging the lats. I'm going to drive it off the ground and just hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drop it down with a straight back and release. So you see how we're patterning this movement. We're getting to this position, but we're keeping it in a very safe place. We're not elevating it. We're not doing the full movement. We're just holding that isometric, that static position that's still strengthening the posterior chain, strengthening the glutes, the hamstrings, the lower back, the upper back, the shoulders, everything. But we're doing this in a very, very safe, controlled way and with a lot of mindfulness. So going back to that, just the same way that we did the plank, I'm going to breathe in, breathe into the belly, come down, pick it up, drive it off the ground. But by driving off the ground, I'm not pulling it, because if I pull it, I immediately start to feel that in my lower back. The best cue I've ever heard was from, I apologize, can't remember who the powerlifter was, but you were driving through the ground. So imagine that bell is going to stay exactly where it is, and I'm going to pull myself through the ground. So I'm driving my feet through the ground rather than just picking up the bell. So again, get in position, pull the shoulders back, engage the lats, drive, and just pick it up and breathe through that tension and relax. So notice how I'm always trying to keep that bell in that center of mass, in my center of mass. So in this case, I'm not extending out. I'm keeping it as close to my spine, as close to my center of gravity as possible. That's going to keep me safer. Then as I explore those movements, get a little bit more comfortable with those movements, I can go further and further and further out until I can start doing crazy, outlandish flows that are really fun. But without this strong foundation, without these strong roots, those branches aren't going to be very strong, and they're definitely not going to go very far. All right, so now we're going to go up a little bit higher. So I've been staying fairly low in a more conventional deadlift. Now I'm going to come up to where I'm in the bottom of a hinged deadlift, where I'm really keeping my shins vertical and putting most of the pressure on the backside. So it's going to be a very strong hip-focused hinge. So I'm going to squat down, drive the shoulders down, engage the lats, lift it up, and now I'm just going to be in that hinge position. Abs are tight, shins are vertical, squeeze, 3, 2, 1, and back down. So we're just going to play around with the different levels of this, and that way we can really master these positions without aggravating the lower back. So now that we've practiced the static, now the controlled movement will be the deadlift. So as we do the deadlift, we're going to maintain, again, that nice perfect alignment, and we're going to keep it very hip dominant. So it's going to be mostly hamstrings. Obviously, there will be some glutes. There will be some other movements. It's not going to be just one particular movement. This isn't an isolation exercise. We're going to start from the ground up, pull the shoulders back. So before we even pick up the bell, we're imagining this is 500 pounds. I'm gearing up for it. I'm pulling my shoulders back, keeping a nice soft face. I might be smiling. And I'm going to come back down to that hinge, find that position, and then drop down from here. I'm going to keep my back nice and straight. I'm going to drive through, and I'm going to stand up all the way. And at that top position, I'm going to get that posterior tilt. Okay? So notice how when I'm in this posterior tilt, I'm not hyperextending. For whatever reason, people like to pull the deadlift, and they think more is better, and they're going to pull and drive their hips back. No, just want to pull, pelvic tilt, squeeze, keeping that front line engaged, keeping that gaze straight ahead. Breathe in, and we're going to unlock. This time, we're not going to touch the ground. So we're just going to hover over the ground and then come right back. So breathe in, unlock the pelvis, come down, and back up. Breathe in, unlock, come down, breathe out. So notice how I'm going to close that valve. I'm not necessarily going to do the Valsalva method where I'm hissing. In this case, I don't need to apply that much pressure to this, but I do want to maintain enough pressure where I can keep the tension on the trunk. One last time. Breathe in. And drive. And now we put it down. So remember, it's not the reps that you do perfectly that are going to hurt yourself. It's typically picking up or dropping the bell at the last or first movement that is when you start to tweak or when you potentially can tweak yourself. So that last one, we come down nice and controlled, relax. Now we can disengage. So we've gone through the isometric into the controlled. Now we're going to do controlled rotation. So before we get into explosive, we're going to start to explore rotation in a fairly safe manner. So again, this is where people would typically injure themselves in real life, is when they're picking up something and have to rotate across. Because of that lack of awareness, that lack of mindfulness from the positions, we want to now practice those. Because remember, you don't fall to the level of your expectations, or you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training and your practice. You can thank Aaron for that quote, because he has instilled that in my head. So now once I've gone through that controlled hinge, that bilateral stance, now we can go into controlled rotation. So with that controlled rotation, we're going to start off with two hands, and the same rule is going to apply. We're still hinging. We're still keeping that nice long spine, that controlled core, but now we're just going to lean to one side. So we'll start off in that bilateral stance where both feet are going to be planted, and I'm just rotating, still keeping that flexion throughout that extension throughout the spine. So I'm really pulling my back, pulling my shoulders back. I'm going to come to the other direction. And I'm playing around with this. So now we can practice that with two hands. From there, we can go into one hand where we come across the body and drive it back up. Come across the body. So now we're focusing on one side. So unilateral work is typically rotational work, and that maybe it's anti-rotation where we're trying not to rotate, but otherwise our core activators that allow for rotation are still being activated. So we're just adding rotation in this sense. The next level will be to now incorporate some unilateral work, but not everybody is ready for that. So we'll incorporate some staggered position. And this allows you to get into this rotational position so much easier without having to worry about balance. So back's nice and straight. So now I'm going to come down, reach down slowly across, and back up. So I'm holding it. This is a contralateral position in that my foot that's planted, the opposite hand is going to be loaded. So this contralateral position is already going to put a lot of rotational forces on me as I come down. So even if I just came down in a very safe, straight position in that strong hinge, I'm still going to be fighting that rotation. So now, without fighting that rotation, but still keeping that perfect form, I can come across the body, practice that, and drive it back up. We'll go back to the other side. Nice and controlled, and then back up. Putting the bell down. So we've gone from the static, that isometric position. From there, we've gone into that controlled position. From there, we've gone into controlled rotation, incorporating a bilateral stance, incorporating that unilateral stance, and then obviously taking that even further into a complete unbalanced position. Now we'll get into ballistic, to the explosive position, which is the next evolution of the movement. So these have all been deadlifts in this case. You kind of see where I'm going with this. Now we're going to get into the explosive deadlift. So as I come up, I want to practice now creating that force from nothing, creating that momentum from the ground, and then absorbing that shock. That's the key element that we're trying to do with explosive work, is max output and then that deceleration to be able to control that drop and not just slam. So for the first couple, we're just going to come up quickly. So it's just going to be an explosive deadlift without leaving the ground. So as I come up, I'm going to breathe in, and I'm going to come up. The concentric is going to be as quick as possible. That, as I rise, it's going to be as fast as possible. So now I might use a little bit more of that Valsalva method, that's keeping that tension. Breathe in, slow and controlled, and then repeat. Come up as fast as I can. So I'm just activating more with less. I'm increasing that force on the bell. So it's the same weight, the same size, but with these 5 movements, I can vary how much pressure it's going to feel on my body. I can add that force just by accelerating this without having to go heavier. So once I've mastered that, I can get explosive without leaving the ground. I've increased the acceleration on this. Now I can start to leave the ground a little bit more. So this is going to get me to focus on that blend of, as I get to that top of that ballistic position where I would be the most unbalanced, and right back into a controlled, safe environment. The reason we're doing this is, as it implies to swing, snatches, cleans, when I'm getting to a swing, we have to blend that safe, unsafe position where that bell is as far and distal from my body as possible to bring it back as close and controlled as possible. So in this case now, I'm going to elevate, I'm going to get triple extension, and then I'm going ankles, knees, hips are going to extend. I'm going to be in full position, but I'm still not going to leave the ground. So breathing in, nice and tight, and I'm going to explode up and come right back down. So I'm not going to stop in that extended position. I'm going to stay, I'm going to get to that tall position and then come right back down. Okay? So again, breathe in, come right back down. Breathe in, right back down. So this is another great controlled way to learn the ballistic nature of the swing without putting the person through the wear and tear of having to put a lot of hinging and getting that weight so far away from your center of mass. Now, the last of these variations will be an explosive deadlift where I'm going to leave the ground. Now, how high you go is dependent on how hard you want to go for this workout, how strong you are, how controlled you can be during these. Otherwise, you might just stick to the controlled deadlift or the explosive deadlift where you stay flat on the ground. So lastly, get into that strong position, breathe nice and tight, get your breath in. I'm going to leave the ground and come right back down. Breathe in, come right back down. So notice how I'm not jarring my joints on the way down. Soft bend, okay? I'm learning how to control that drop under that pressure, but I'm still keeping that bell close to the body, which is ultimately going to be safer than if I just start swinging the bell haphazardly. So going back to that position, going back to the principles of how we've built this, where you got the isometric to the controlled rotation to the explosive. Now, in this case, we're not going to do it, but the next level of this would be explosive rotation. So if I were doing one-arm swings, alternating swings, rotational snatches, something that's going to put my spine in a precarious position where I'm now rotating, but doing it ballistically, that's the last level, that's the last evolution, that's the last thing you've got to earn before getting to into the flows. But you have to be able to master all the steps leading up to it. That way you stay safe and you stay secure. So the next thing we're going to do, so once we've gone through the deadlifts, and you can tell there's a wide variety of deadlifts that you can do. You can change your foot position. You can go into a deadlift flow. Again, I don't want to just show you an endless number of exercises. We already got a lot of stuff we're covering through this course, but just understanding the principles of how we're doing this. So then the next step is going to be the swing.